Hello everybody, welcome back. We're going to go ahead and go over the Season 5 off-season rundown here as we come off a loss in the Orange Bowl to Virginia Tech, and we're just going to scroll through some of these games that happened. You see Boise State took an L. We go further down. Mountain West not doing amazingly. Air Force does beat Toledo. Minnesota beating California there. We've got a few other games coming up. We'll see Utah, Utah State. All of them struggling. I guess Utah's not Pac-12 or Mountain West, but Nevada losing to Arizona State. You've got Utah State losing to Washington. That was a bloodbath, and I can understand what that was like. We were on the receiving end of the Washington pain train last season. Utah State taking a big beating there. And as you know, we look through this end of season, we kind of want to. You see, Utah took a beating to Arkansas. Just took a wallop. Kai Linehan going into his senior season had an okay game, but you know, defense just didn't show up for them. As we look at these scores, you'll notice that we're not there quite yet. We're really close to breaking it open, but we are not quite there yet. We get to the Rose Bowl. Georgia took the W. TCU fans they went ahead and said that they won, kind of like the UCF season. They went ahead and said they won the national championship, 13-0. They had claim for it, frankly. That's just how things are in the BCS era. You see Kansas finally getting back into bowl eligibility. That's pretty nice. And then Clemson beating Michigan in a 1-point game. Talk about an ending to the season. A field goal with 2 minutes left, and then the defense did the rest as Clemson would go undefeated 14-0 and win it all. Look at the final polls for the season. TCU finishing second. No first place votes, and I think that's just criminal. Olympia does finish 7th, so not a big drop. I think it's well understood that we deserve to be here, even though we didn't play well towards the end of it. And then no Mountain West teams, obviously, gracing the top 25 after a really bad finish for the Mountain West Conference. Kansas dropping out. That's just funny to see. Kenny Mcintosh from Georgia goes ahead and wins the Heisman Trophy. Obviously, it probably would have been Darius McIntyre had he kept up his play by this point in the season, and you will see he gets recognized for the insane amount of play he was doing. Just unfortunate that his injury happened, and he is already beginning the recovery process. I hear it's going very well, good surgeries. You'll see Darius actually finishes second for the Maxwell here, behind Clemson's quarterback. And then for the Walter Camp, again, Darius McIntyre finishing second. So really just impressive from him. And then the Bednarik, we have all Olympia. 7 out of the top 8 players were Olympia players. John Schweitz taking it home with Brett Kraft and Curtis Simpson as the 2 other finalists. And of course, you got other Olympia players there. Just an insane year for our defense. Nagurski, John Schweitz wins it with Curtis Simpson barely finishing second. I mean, Olympia was just all over the field this year. For the O'Brien, finishing 3rd despite sitting out for half the season, Darius McIntyre, that is how well he was playing. You have to put that in perspective. Walker, nobody here for us. And then the Blitnikoff, surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, no Olympia wide receivers made this one. The John Mackey, no tight ends, really just not a good passing year for us. The Outland, linemen were okay, not great though. Remington, again, linemen were okay, not great. The Lombardi, you see Dylan Winters actually finished 8th for this one. He didn't have as good of a... He had a pretty good year. It wasn't like his best year, but the Butkus goes to John Schweitz with Curtis Simpson and Robert Humphrey right behind. And then 8th was actually Kevin Patterson in the voting there, so really good for him. The Thorpe, Brett Kraft with Bradley Garrett, Cody Callaway, and Byron Handy, all top 4. That was insane to see. The Groza, Mike Harris gets it stolen from him by Virginia Tech, who beats us down once again. Jared Moses winning that one when Mike Harris frankly deserved it. He was the best kicker in the nation this year. And then the guy, we don't see Byron Robinson here, but he did have an okay year. For the Jet Returner Award, Derek Canary almost makes the top 5, so pretty good for him. And if we look at the first team all NCAA, let's go ahead and scroll down the list here. You will notice that Curtis Simpson and John Schweitz both make the linebacker first team. Good for them. Cornerbacks, obviously, 2 of the best in the nation. Well, the 2 best in the nation. Brett Kraft and Byron Handy. Cody Callaway and Bradley Garrett and Mike Harris both all made the team as well. On the second team, we see Robert Humphrey actually made it, so good for him. And then we'll notice that, let's go down the freshman list here. So for the freshmen, Curtis Simpson, again, making it. Curtis Simpson was great for a redshirt freshman. And then Derek Canary making it for the returner. Inside the Mountain West Conference, let's go ahead and take a look at that. Darius McIntyre getting first team despite being out half the season. Lee House, Zeke Roberts, Darius Robbins, Wayne Ward, Jason Clemens, Dylan Winters, Anthony Freeman, Joe Wright, Curtis Simpson, Robert Humphrey, John Schweiss, Byron Handy, Brett Kraft, Cody Calloway, Bradley Garrett, Mike Harris. And then Jason Edwards on the second team, Chase Poole. We got more. Let's go down. Vincent Hargrove, Kevin Patterson. You've got Tanner Clay even making it somehow. I don't know how he made it. And then Byron Robinson. So really great year from the Olympia team in the Mountain West. And then even we'll go ahead and look at Kyle Linehan making his first ever second team for the Pac-12. So good for him. For season stats, Tyler Hunt finishes the year with the most passing yards and the most passing touchdowns. Obviously, once he came in, we actually started to throw the ball quite a bit. He does finish with more interceptions, which is a little embarrassing in my opinion. 71% completion percentage is pretty solid though. He was completing a lot of his passes, so only so much you can do. Rushing, obviously Darius McIntyre takes this one. Actually, Kirk Doherty gets the second place rushing award. Obviously, Bo Johnson got hurt, so he wasn't able to compete for that. And Kosi Mensah just didn't get as many touches as Kirk Doherty did. But obviously, Darius McIntyre way ahead on the rushing front this year. Even some rushes in for the wide receivers. So not bad there, not bad at all. We move along here to the receiving, and you'll notice that Lee House is our number one receiver, both in volume and yardage. He was really consistent this year, I have to admit. He really came onto the scene. I think he was the best receiver we had. Zeke Roberts was boom or bust. I mean, really and truly, Zeke Roberts had so many catches, he probably could have gone for 1,000 yards if he didn't drop the ball so often. Deon Hurd, not a ton of production in his final year, which is very, very unfortunate. We'll look at yardage here. Zeke Roberts did get he just got the long balls. He always got the long balls. But touchdowns go to Lee House as well. Corey Cross really came alive towards the end of the season, and I can't wait to see him play more next season. And then long goes to Kirk Doherty. He had the longest catch of the season at only 61 yards, which is a little disappointing. And then yards after catch go to Lee House as well. He really just made things happen when he caught the ball. Most drops, 6 for Zeke Roberts, really disappointing. Ryan Jones with 5, also disappointing. And then Ben Thompson with 5. I don't know if that's entirely accurate, but that is how it goes. Deon Hurd had a great season blocking, and he always does. It'll be really shame missing him on the outside. You'll notice that sacks were given up by 3 of our top linemen, so I'm not sure what exactly happened there. On defense, it was the John Schweiss show this year. He really did, again, come to play. Most tackles. I wouldn't say he was our best defensive player this year. He was arguably top 3. Maybe our best, but I wouldn't outright say he was our best. Just because of how well Brett Kraft and Byron Handy played. Tackles for loss, Curtis Simpson had the most, and he also had the most sacks. Kevin Patterson really close behind him, and then John Schweiss with a lot of tackles for loss. Less sacks, though. Curtis Simpson was a big breakout player. I did not expect him as a redshirt freshman to be as good as he was, and he's only getting better. He's actually a really good coverage guy too, which is kind of crazy. He's supposed to be a little better in coverage and a little worse in the run game, and he came up with 9 sacks and 23 TFLs, which is pretty nuts. Interceptions, Byron Handy finishes with 7 with Brett Kraft right behind at 6. I mean, these two have been neck and neck with picks since they came to this university. College, I suppose. And if we look at scores, you'll notice that Byron Handy came away with 1. Actually, Byron Handy had a lot of drop picks as well. He really was close to making big things happen this year, every single down. As far as touchdowns go, Byron Handy with 1, Brett Kraft with 1, Cody Calloway with 1, and John Schweiss with a fumble return. So 3 pick sixes and a fumble return is how we end the season on defense. Mike Harris, a perfect 19 for 19. 62 was his long, and he kicked quite a few. We'll go ahead and see. Every single extra point was made. All of his kicks, for the most part, came from beyond 50, and he nailed them. I mean, Mike Harris is going to the NFL soon. Byron Robinson, he had a great season. Definitely think he could be better. He's got some room to work on his accuracy, but otherwise he did pretty well. And then as far as returning, Brett Kraft actually had the most return yards and yet didn't get any recognition All-American-wise returning. He averaged the most, no touchdowns this year returning, which is a little surprising from Olympia. Derek Canary, though, also had a pretty good year returning. Not as good as Brett Kraft, but it was decent. Punt returning, I think Derek Canary had a better season punt returning than he did kick returning. And then if we look at career stats, so Darius McIntyre at this point in his career, 53 and 38. Tyler Hunt finishes with 5,600 yards, 60 TDs, and 41 interceptions, which is insane, and a 64% completion percentage. So Tyler Hunt really never quite was the player that we thought he would be, but he was also pretty solid. Bo Johnson finishes with 1,800 yards rushing, 5-yard average, 18 touchdowns, along with 55 yards. So Bo Johnson never really got to that place either. Kosi Mensah, 700 yards for a fullback. He really was amazing in the run game. You can see just how many yards after contact. Fumbles, Bo Johnson and Kosi Mensah both have not ever fumbled, which is really impressive. Receiving, Dion Hurd finishes his career with 1,850 yards, 140 receptions, 24 touchdowns. Again, a player that just didn't get as many targets as he should have. Only 11 drops on his career, which is pretty impressive. Zeke Roberts with 2,400 yards, 22 touchdowns, but he does finish his career with 24 drop passes, which is just unacceptable. Kosi Mensah finishing with 600 yards receiving, and then Braxton Hayes with about 507 touchdowns. And that wraps up the receivers, seniors, and then obviously blocking. 44 pancakes for Dion Hurd. He was just a monster on the edge. Now, defensively, Dylan Winters is going to finish up with 94 tackles, 90 of them solo, 44 tackles for loss, which is pretty nuts, 23 sacks, which is the Olympia college record for a career, and then no interceptions, but 2 forced fumbles and 2 fumble returns or recoveries. Sean Vogel, not much to write home about here. Decent backup player, though. Go ahead and give him the recognition he deserves. And then we will move on to kicking. We'll go ahead and look at that real quick. As when it came to kicking, Mike Harris improved quite considerably. You'll see that he actually is only 90%, 89% for his career. Then Byron Robinson, pretty decent in his 2 years of punting. Dion Hurd does actually finish with 450 yards on returns. I don't even remember him returning the ball all that often, but he finishes that way. So when we look at team stats, we'll go ahead and sort through this here. You can see Olympia finishes pretty decent as far as offensive total yardage. As far as offensive yards, we're about top 15. Passing, we are actually top 7, which is surprising. For the year, rushing, we were a middling team as far as rushing yards go. That would have been blown out of the water had Darius stayed in the season. Points per game, we were 3rd. Passing touchdowns, we're top 7. Rushing touchdowns, we're pretty good. And then most sacks allowed, we're probably middling on that one as well, which is, nationally that's not bad. First downs, we were one of the worst teams, one of the not as good teams for first downs. If we go ahead and look inside the scope of the Mountain West, you'll notice we were by far the highest yardage team. Offensively, we were the 2nd best team behind Boise. As far as passing yards go, we were number 1. As far as rushing yards go, we were towards the bottom of the pack. Again, we would have been number 1 with Darius. Points per game, obviously number 1. Passing touchdowns, obviously number 1. Even rushing touchdowns, though, we got the job done on the ground. I mean, most rushing touchdowns, gave up less sacks than a lot of teams, and then first downs, we were one of the worst when it came to that. Defensively, we gave up the most yards in the Mountain West. Well, not exactly. Okay, I take that back. We were only bottom 4. We gave up the most passing yards. That's what I was going to say. We didn't give up many rushing yards, though. So, really, this team stepped it up as far as defense compared to previous years. Points allowed, we were pretty okay. Middle of the pack in the Mountain West. So, not amazing. Sacks, we were number 1, though. And then fumbles forced, we were 11. And interceptions, we were number 1 as well at 20. Converting the third down, really want to see us get better at that. We finished middle of the pack. Fourth down percentage, we finished really well. And then 2-point percentage, we were pretty much the number one team when it comes to that. So conversions were pretty good for us. We just need to get better at third down. If you look at the red zone, we were pretty bad at converting offensively. However, defensively, we were middle of the pack to okay at preventing scores. Penalty-wise, we were the best team. And then turnovers, differential, one of the worst, despite having the most takeaways in the conference. We had the most giveaways in the conference by far. So one thing to keep working on is getting that giveaway number down. We just turn the ball over way too often. And that'll do it for that. For a record book, Tyler Hunt does have the most touchdowns in a career passing. He has the most yards in a career passing and the most yards in a game. He set that one this season. That one I don't expect to be broken for a while. The other two I expect to be broken by next year, probably, by Darius. So that's what he was able to do this year. Receiving wise, Lance Roach still holds most of these records. Zeke Roberts holds the most receiving yards in a game. But as far as receptions in a game, that now goes to Corey Cross, who had 11 receptions. On defense, Byron Handy holds all the interception records, which Brett Kraft might be able to steal away from him. It's going to be back and forth. Dylan Winters holds the sacks in a career record. And then as far as rushing goes, Darius McIntyre holds every single record at Olympia for rushing the ball. Eric Cook did win 13 games last season. His contract is targeting around 7 wins. He has been offered a 5-year extension and he will sign it, I've heard. But you have to remember that he may not actually stay with the university, so that he could get bought out and go somewhere else. So Bob Stitt, our offensive coordinator, left, and you'll see where he goes, and we're going to be playing this team. And we get Tavita Pritchard, which is, he's all right. So Bob Stitt takes over for Scott Frost at Nebraska. He stole away several recruits from Utah in the process, and we will be seeing him next season. You can bet on that. Tavita Pritchard was let go essentially from Arizona. He was not renewed. He was okay. That's all I'll say about him. So we'll see if he can step it up for us. Notice a lot of graduations, and then one of the recruits that was highly touted last season is Tyler Zandalay. He is leaving for playing time to Nevada. He did not appreciate the red shirt. We went ahead, and I think Coach Cook tried to offer him that, hey, you'll play in all the games of the season. He didn't bite. Coach Cook said, hey, you'll probably have more than 20 tackles. And he didn't bite. And then finally, Coach Cook said, hey, it's unrealistic, but maybe you get 5 sacks. Maybe you get 5 sacks. And he didn't take it. So Tyler Zandalay will be transferring to Nevada. We will probably be seeing them. Going into recruiting, Coach Cook said he was targeting primarily Kevin Tate and Stitch Robinson, as we need fullback and tight end. We're pretty desperate at both positions. He did put a lot of points into Samuel Reed. A lot of time into Samuel Reed, who is currently looking at Navy and really could unlock our run game. Samuel Reed is a great running blocker, not a good passing blocker. But again, his focus was Kevin Tate and Stitch Robinson. And the biggest reasons for that is we just saw how effective Kosi Mensah was at fullback. Kevin Tate is a similar type player. Maybe not quite as dynamic as Kosi was, but maybe a slightly better blocker. And then Stitch Robinson, I've heard a lot of comparisons to Jason Witten, and I think that's a very fair comparison because he's a big body, he can catch it, he can block, but he's not the fastest, and he's not the best at running routes. So we would go ahead and offer those 3 players, and Coach Cook would spend that amount of time with those players. And of course, you're wondering, splitting up time, does that mean you get none of them because you're not giving enough time? Well, it would turn out we would get Stitch Robinson. Kevin Tate would also go ahead and commit, but Samuel Reed would stick with his commit to the Navy. His soft commit became a hard commit, and he is now going to be a Navy guard. Good for him. Very proud of him for going into the military and serving us. You can see just how dynamic this recruiting class was. You have players like James Mcintosh and Zach Schuster, and Stitch Robinson and Kevin Tate. And that landed us the 23rd recruiting class in the nation, which is insane. The highest Olympia has ever been rated in recruiting class. And that puts us over every single Mountain West team. So for the foreseeable future, we will dominate the Mountain West. Of course, we are potentially looking to leave the Mountain West. Nebraska, Bob Stitt's new team, finishes with the 3rd recruiting class. We go down the list here and we can see Utah really suffering on the recruiting trail. 57th in the recruiting class. We go further down. Louisville, Coach Chris Pratt, who is safe for now. He didn't do a very good job recruiting this year in his first year. We scroll up. Utah State, where are they at? BYU, they got 32nd. Where's Utah State? We'd go all the way down. We'd look all the way at the bottom of this list that I've compiled of recruiting classes. And towards the very bottom of the NCAA, whoa, Utah State 123rd. They might be dead in the water. Training results, Darius McIntyre had a great training program. He gets a little extra speed this season from what I've heard. Acceleration is a little faster, really smart player now. He's been studying a lot. Roa Latu really impressed. All the quarterbacks impressed. I want to make that a note of that. Wesley Dunmore, Christian Armstrong, James Morris, all 3 impressed. But Roa Latu stepped it up. As far as running backs go, we'll get to that in a second. You'll notice that at quarterback, really just a lot of all-around improvement. Frankly, I mean that's the best way to put it. Darius McIntyre is the best player, obviously, but throwing the ball might not be the best, actually. James Morris might be our best pure passer right now, and then Christian Armstrong with that cannon he's got, well, he's definitely going to develop into somebody. Darius McIntyre will probably be starting this season, and so Christian Armstrong going into his redshirt freshman year might not get much playing time, but heck, you see him in a year or two, he might be starting for this Olympia team. And really just impressed with this quarterback crew. That's all I can say. A lot of solid options here that could start at other universities. We go ahead and move to the running backs, and you'll notice that Kirk Doherty, Captain Kirk, finished the season really strong. Didn't have the best training regimen. Him and Cameron Anderson both slacked a little. J.J. Thomas really impressed as far as his off-season training. Actually, Eddie Hall and Eddie Jong, E.J. Hall and Eddie Jong, that is. Eddie Jong looked really good. So Eddie Jong was a redshirted guy from Utah. We looked at him a little bit. More of a scat back type player, really good in the passing game. Eddie Jong turned some eyes, I'll tell you that much. He might not be the best under center, but right now, if you get Eddie Jong out in the flats and give him some space, he will make things happen. At wide receiver, Ben Thompson finishes a really good season, off-season. Lee House, a little disappointing. Him and Ryan Jones both might have been goofing around a little much. Corey Cross had a really impressive offseason and finished to his last season. We probably will see a lot more of him. And then Ty Crease and Rudy Rutherford, the 2 redshirt freshmen, both looked really strong. We'll definitely hope to get them on the field a little bit as they each have their respective talents when it comes to route running and speed and catching. Ty Crease is a burner. He's a pure burner. He's very much like Zach Schuster, and that his straight line speed might be top of the nation. Rudy Rutherford, a little more that you get him the ball, he makes things happen, sort of similar to Lee House. He also was a quarterback in high school sometimes, so we'll see. At tackle, Jason Edwards, not the best offseason. Really disappointed in him. He will still probably be starting, but definitely could have used more. Darius Robbins and Torian Fields both had a good offseason. Chase Poole had an insane offseason. He was putting in work in the weight room. He is strong. He is ready to go at center. And then Bob Haleth, actually. I've heard really good things about him. He's really, really good fundamentally. Obviously, Jason Clemens did a really good job too. At defensive end, Pele Latu is starting to turn some heads. He's really impressive. He might get some playtime this year. And then a defensive tackle, Vincent Hargrove and Dustin Terrell both really shined. At linebacker, we have Curtis Simpson, who continues to put in that work effort. John Schweiss, not the best offseason from him, but he's already almost at the top of his game. And then at the other outside linebacker position, we have Robert Humphrey and Kevin Patterson, who both did a great job in the offseason as well in the weight room and agility courses and stuff like that. We move to cornerback, and Brett Kraft continues to be the best player potentially. Byron Handy, not a good offseason. I've heard he was not spending full focus on football this offseason. He was messing around a little bit, but he still projects to be our starter, if not our second cornerback. Really impressed with Hugh Jordan, Alex Hampton, and Brett Kraft out of this cornerback class, or cornerback crew here. Free safety, Coda Callaway continues to be really impressive. He is now one of the best players on this defense, which really came out of nowhere. Derek Canary, not a great offseason for him. Bradley Garrett didn't have an amazing offseason either, but Bobby Banks does go up a little bit in the depth chart. Mike Harris gets a little more accurate, I'm sure, and Byron Robinson has really been working on his punting. I expect to see a lot of good things from him this season. And that will do it for our offseason. We will be coming at you live with some practice soon. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.